Okay, this is going to be about reproduction. We'll start with an introduction and then we'll go into male and female reproduction. Okay, so reproduction is the creation of new individuals from existing ones. And there are two ways in which animals reproduce, sexual and asexual. With asexual reproduction, we have the creation of offspring whose genes all come from one parent without the fusion of egg and sperm. So you get genetically identical offspring, and only mitosis is involved. The advantages to asexual reproduction would be that it allows animals which cannot move around a lot to produce offspring without having to find mates. Okay, so it allows animals that can't move around very much to produce offspring without having to find a mate. Another advantage of asexual reproduction is that you can produce many offspring quickly, and this allows a species to expand its population pretty rapidly. The disadvantage to asexual reproduction is if there is a change in the environment that the species cannot adjust to, well, then it wipes out the entire population because there's not any genetic variability amongst any of the individuals. There are some types of asexual reproduction we want to look at. The first type is called budding. This is the splitting off of a new individual from an existing one. And we have the hydra, for example. The bud forms a small group of cells on the side of the parent. The cells pile up into a mound and then lengthen into a pillar. And bulges appear at the free end, which will grow into the tentacles. So the bud is a small version, really, of itself. So as I said, the group of cells on the side of the parent, okay, they form a bud. The cells pile up into a mound and then lengthen into a pillar. Bulges appear at the free end. Okay, bulges appear at the free end, and this grows into a tentacle. A foot forms at the base. Okay, you can see the foot forming here at the base. And after all the specialized cells and tissues have developed, the young hydra will break away and settle in a new location and leads a separate life. And this is also called vegetative reproduction. There's another organism that we want to look at with regard to budding called the obelia. This is a small animal. It's related to a jellyfish, and they exist in two forms. Okay, we're going to talk about the asexual form. They exist as polyps, which stay attached to rocks. The polyps are slender and cylindrical. They grow and produce many offshoots, just like a plant, and they grow by budding to create identical polyps. Eventually, a colony of hundreds to thousands of polyps form, and so there's a large family, all identical. This is considered an example of a coral colony. Keep in mind that it takes millions of coral colonies to create a coral reef. So this is an example of a species that makes up a part of a coral reef. Now, there's also a part of the obelia's life that can be sexual. The polyps can also produce an umbrella-shaped outgrowth, which will break off and float away. This is the free-swimming medusa form. The female medusa produces eggs, and the males produce the sperm. The eggs get fertilized in the water and develop into a planula. These find a resting place and develop into new polyps. So you can see here the medusa, and you can see, but there's going to be a male and a female medusa, and they will develop into a planula that will settle down over here and can either form polyps and maybe eventually another medusa. Another type of asexual reproduction is fission. This is when one individual separates into two. This is called binary fission. So it separates into two individuals of about equal size. And this is how bacteria or prokaryotes reproduce. A cleavage furrow appears after the DNA is replicated, And this is just a shallow groove in the cell surface. This is also how plants and animal cells divide by mitosis. It's a similar process. So the mitotic cell division is the process eukaryotes use to duplicate their cells for growth and repair. It is also a way for the bacteria to reproduce. Okay, and this is just a review of how plants and animals reproduce by the process. Well, they don't reproduce this way, but they can grow new cells for growth and repair in this fashion. Okay, there's another type of asexual reproduction called fragmentation and regeneration. Fragmentation is the breaking of the parent body into several pieces. It must be accompanied by regeneration, which involves regrowth of body parts from pieces of an animal. An example of an animal that does this is the starfish or sea star. It's not a fish, but rather it's an invertebrate called an echinoderm, and it has a spiny skin. They're symmetrical when they're born. Then as they grow, they develop 5 similar parts. Some even have 9 to 10 arms, but usually 5. They have hundreds of tube feet that line the underside of the arm, and these suction tubes are used to move forward, but they're also involved with respiration and collecting food. In fact, to eat, a sea star can grasp a mollusk, which is like a clam, and pull its shell apart using the suction feet. Then it will spit digestive enzymes into the shell of the mollusk. These enzymes turn the mollusk into a liquid, and then the sea star uses its cilia to guide the liquidy mollusk into its mouth. Now, if a sea star loses one of its arms, it will regenerate a new one in a matter of weeks. Also, a lost arm can develop into a whole new sea star if it has at least 1/5 of the central disc attached. In other words, you have to have 1/5 of the central disc of the sea star on the arm in order for that to grow into a brand new sea star. But that takes about a year. Some species can throw off their arms rapidly, but this is used to escape enemies. It's not for reproduction. There's also another organism called the flatworm, planaria, and if the worm is cut in half, each half regrows in the missing parts. Also, this is a type of fragmentation and regeneration. We also have reaggregation. This is a rotifer, but this is not what I wanted to talk about yet. I wanted to talk about a sponge, but I don't think I have a picture of that. But reaggregation, if a sponge is damaged, individual cells that were not affected may clump together to grow into a new sponge. All right, what I want to talk about now is another type of asexual reproduction, parthenogenesis, which is the development of an unfertilized egg into an adult. In the more complex animals, asexual reproduction is rare, although some can alternate between cycles of sexual and asexual reproduction. For example, honeybees. The queens lay fertilized eggs, which develop into female workers, but they also lay unfertilized haploid eggs, which become males, which are called the drones, the workers. The rotifer, which you're looking at now, is a wheel animalcule, as it's been described, and it was one of the first microscopic life forms to be studied. It's a minute aquatic animal. It's about 1/25 of an inch, so it's about 0.5 millimeters. It lives in freshwater bogs, ponds, and puddles, has variable shapes. It is free swimming, or we say it is sessile. The anterior end has a mouth, which is surrounded by cilia. There are sensory projections, which sweep the food particles into their mouth. The head region has a crown of cilia, and these are even retractable when they are in motion. They resemble a turning wheel. Okay, so the crown of cilia that they have at the head region, even though they're retractable, well, when they're in motion, they resemble a turning wheel. At the rear end of the rotifer, there's an adhesive organ, or a foot, which secretes a cement, and this foot enables the rotifer to attach to surfaces. It has a cuticle which covers their body. The males have a smaller body. The females have an ovary which can extrude 2 types of eggs, and it depends on the season. One type of egg can be fertilized and develops. The other egg type develops without being fertilized, sometimes into a female, and at other times into a male. However, the males are rare and only live for a very short time. Okay, we'll take a short break here and then we'll start sexual reproduction.